Welcome to the Black Paper. My name is Ndukwe Ono.
I'm Chetawanze.
Cheta, looks like we've had quite an interesting and exciting weekend with fireworks of words flying all over the place. One of your favorite humans, Jim Ratcliffe, set the
Wait,
tone for.
stop that. Just stop that one. What does that mean? Somebody I've
Well,
never heard of before.
and that's how it goes. Somebody shits in public, and suddenly the denials is almost like the Mandelson thing. Suddenly everyone like, well, who, him? I've never met him. No, I've never been in the same room with him. But
I've never
anyway,
been in the same room with you. If I've been in the same room with you, will I be talking with you?
Can you imagine?
Eh? Our own villas in Monaco.
You know this. Well, I mean, you would probably be his neighbor, and
That kind of thing.
dodging taxes in the UK whilst spewing the nonsense that people like you and me are colonizing his country. Do you want to go into all that? Because I doubt I won't curse him out if I try to do sort of like an intro. So please let me hand over to you.
I mean, there's really no point cursing him out. It's just it's a what I like about it is the fact that, quote unquote, the racists are outing themselves. My opinion is that there are many people like him who hold such views, but they've not been able to express them publicly. Now, and this is where that thing I talk about Overton window comes in. The Overton window, basically, again, I always like to define it, is the window within of what is allowed to be discussed in public, what is publicly acceptable as discussion. And what has happened in many Western countries over the last 20 years is that the Overton window has shifted to the right. So things that were unacceptable, especially in terms of racism, have now become acceptable political discourse. And no individual, in my view, has been more effective at accelerating the move of the Overton window to the right than Elon Musk. So now, a lot of racist crap, people say it in public. So what happened with Jim Ratcliffe was, in my view, it was signaling. He put out a bone, he put out a gem for everybody to react to so that he will know what can be said. But he clearly supports the Nigel Farages of this world, which again is very ironic because he was a Brexiteer. He backed Brexit. Brexit has been an economic disaster for the UK. What happens is these guys, none of them has apologized for the poor decisions that they made, the poor choices that they made. Instead, they're using the fact that there's something that is I'm trying not to use the word wrong, but that's what is bouncing around in my head. There's something that is wrong when you have a culture that's basically because someone has made money, you give him you appropriate a certain type of wisdom to the guy. That's what is happening with a lot of these tech bros.
Sorry, but just when you just said that, I was smiling because there's that phrase "who no come no no," which basically means if you've never been to a place, you can't fully know anything about it, or you won't have an understanding except you've experienced. Yes, because again, it reminds me of staying back in Nigeria, thinking, "My God, we have the worst of the lot." Somebody leaves home, makes money, most times in dubious fashion, comes back and suddenly he's given either a chieftaincy title or he's given the mouthpiece in a place where he shouldn't talk. But it's the same thing here. Somebody is a movie star, suddenly you appropriate some sort of wisdom to them. Someone is a successful businessman like Jim Ratcliffe, he owns in Ineos, he's the 7th richest British person. So suddenly everyone thinks this man is wise, this man is incapable of spewing rubbish. And also forget, sorry Cheta, to your point about Brexit, This guy, along with the Nigel Farages of this world, wreaks havoc on the British economy, on the UK economy. Then he shuffles off to Monaco, where he doesn't have to pay tax, so avoids paying 4 billion, up to four estimated 4 billion in taxes, but then looks at people like me and you and says, these people are the reason why the UK economy is failing, because they are taken out of the system, forgetting that. And I'll keep saying that when you are coming here, especially as a legal migrant, you are paying IHS surcharges, you're paying income tax when you get a job, you're paying your way through. If you're a student, you are paying double the cost that an international student is. So we are actually upholding the system financially. But then some human being who has the choice to change of changing his tax status so that he doesn't have to, or his residency status, so he doesn't have to pay tax up to 4 billion, turns around and says the person who's paying maybe 20-30K a year in tax is a problem. Sorry, when you just spoke about giving some sort of assigning some sort of wisdom to people that have money, I just had to come in there. Sorry, Chita.
No, it was an important thing. So I think it's important to point out that Jim Ratcliffe, again, like I said, he supported Brexit. He campaigned for Brexit. And then, less than a year after Brexit actually happened, he carried himself and moved into the European Union that he had said was evil and all of that. It saved him £4 billion in tax payments. He had, there was this factory that they were supposed to set up. His company is Ineos. He's a chemical engineer, so they do chemicals, industrial chemicals. And they ended up moving that factory to France. Or he did it. So he was supposed to set it up in Wales. Rather than setting up in Wales to make Britain great again, he set it up in France. He exists. So it's the hypocrisy is very, very stark. Now, I think another thing that should be pointed out is his use of the word colonialism, that the UK is being colonized. It's so ahistorical that it rankles. We experienced colonialism. I come from a place that was destroyed twice by colonists. First, under spurious allegations that we did human sacrifice and all of that. In order to civilize us, they made allegations and then would come and decimate the place. So the part of Igbo land that I come from was the last part of Nigeria to resist British colonial rule. We were decimated. Our leaders were hanged. I don't see white British leaders being hanged by African or Asians. That is colonialism. Colonialism is brutal. I don't see our people extracting resources from here and taking back to where we come from and giving the British nothing in return. Oh, people always forget. So, for example, when I see some of our people pining for colonial era, the British left the whole of northern Nigeria with just 2 graduates. The British left the whole of Nigeria with just 1 university. The British left the whole of Nigeria with less than 10 hospitals. So for all of the failures, and this is not to paint the Nigerian government that have come since in great debt. They could have done a lot better. The current government, there's a reason why people still up and leave. But to look back at colonialism with rose-tinted spectacles, or to now say what is happening now is it's racist to the core. It's racist, and he's basically using racially charged language to describe a demographic shift that he finds inconvenient. And that, for me, is part of the big problem.
And the other thing you mentioned the Overton window, and we saw it in the response or non-response of the political class immediately after that interview. Keir Starmer first, out of the door to say, "Look, this is wrong. He should apologize." Nigel Farage came out, of course, in defense, but not only defending it, even added a lot more layers to what was not said. And our sister Kemi, who benefits from all this one way or the other, said nothing. And it tells you how, if you look at the political parties for their rights and the wrongs, those who especially major so-called major political parties right now, at least the ones that are shaping political opinion, you see where they are with this sort of language being used. You're right. The racists have come out of the door. They come out of the shadow. British politics right now is defined, whether we like it or not, by racism and how much you are able or how comfortable you are with the sort of language that is going on. But the one interesting thing, and I do believe, like you hinted, this was very deliberate, his choice of language. He might have come out to say, no, I didn't think it through. I believe he
No,
thought
that
it.
we can discuss that thing that he issued the next day that they called an apology. It's not an apology.
Yeah.
Anything that you claim is an apology that contains if or buts is not an apology. It's just waffling.
Yeah, but because here's why I say it was a dog whistle. It was a maximum dog whistle. A lot of
Yes.
people who talk about, Britain stopped the slave trade and all that, either do not know or forget that up until
Or
2015,
ignore.
that up until 2015, British taxpayers were still footing the
Pay
bill for the
for
slave trade, for slave to
exactly.
slave owners. So when someone like Jim Ratcliffe, who definitely knows this fact, comes out and says, "Oh, we're being colonized," what he's doing is signaling to his fellow racists or to other people who remember that up until 2015 they were all paying former colonial masters and
Former
slave
slave holders.
former slaveholders.
Because it's important to point out that colonialism started more than 50 years after slavery ended. So, or at least after the slave trade ended. It's important to put that fact out there. It's also important because, again, one of the things that Jim Ratcliffe's statements or his interview was fact-free. So, for example, he claimed that the UK population grew by 12 million in 5 years. Actually, it was 2.7 million. So where did he manufacture the extra 10 million people from? Oh, a thing you talked about, I think the key thing, and this is where I would stop on this so that we can move on, because the reason I would prefer us to stop rather quickly is that it risks one getting angry, which is not very good for this. But
Yeah.
the key thing about this is there's this unwelcome narrative when we are coming, and the Home Office, as an example, had a very silly tweet that it put out last week about migrants taking
Look,
paying
or the UK
migrants
taxpayers
being
paying the
paid.
bills.
Yeah.
God
So
Almighty, that was
there's a
disgusting.
fundamental problem, and there's this excellent video, I think by somebody called Jimmy the Giants, who put out that the UK is actually the colonialism that the UK practiced elsewhere. It's actually being practiced on the UK, but not by who the British think, but by the Americans. And I liked that video because it was by a British guy who actually went back in the history to lay out his points. I think what I'll send the video to the producer so they can put it in the show notes. But it's very important to point that out because you claim, and this is speaking directly to Keir Starmer now, you claim you want people to integrate, but there's a very hostile environment. Consultation just ended. The Home Office keeps raising fees for visas, for IHS. They've quietly changed it. So, for example, if you're applying for a 2-year visa renewal, you still have to pay 3 years IHS. That's naked extortion. You are making money because, and this is because immigrants are a politically convenient group. So somebody comes, you are extorting him. After extorting him, he still has to work, pay for NHS, pay for national insurance, pay for pay for pay for all of that. Yet he's still demonized. I mean, how does that work? How do you expect such a person to integrate when he always has to be looking over his shoulder on the fear that you could chase him away very, very quickly?
Mm. And that's a very, very fair point, because it takes more than just a tweet to say, oh well, we are on the side of decency. The state, the British state right now, as you just said, is clearly extorting migrants. You pay through your nose for everything. Still there's room for people like Jim Ratcliffe, who, interestingly, Man United was one of the first clubs to sign up to the anti-racism campaign by the FA. So it's just all sorts of wrong. But yes, I do agree with you, Cheta. On one hand, well, Keir Starmer seems to want to say the right things. On the other hand, the actions of the Home Secretary, the actions of the Home Office,
Ironically, is a child
that
of
tweet
migrants,
is
and so
uh,
it brings me back to the final thing I will say on this.
the final
You
thing.
yeah, you mentioned Kemi Badenoch.
Mm.
I would add Suella Braverman. I would add Zia Yusuf, who was on TV yesterday defending crap. I would add what's his name that has not Nadine Zahawi. Although yes, you can add Nadine Zahawi, but Ben, the guy that has teamed up with Rupert Lowe to form this new party.
Uh,
Ben Habib, yeah, Ben
mm.
Habib, yeah. I would add. At the end of the day, the truth of the matter is, when people like Jim Ratcliffe are talking, and I think all of us who are minorities in this environment have been in that place where you are with a white friend and the person says something racist, and the person catches himself, turns and looks at you and says, "I don't mean you.
You're
You,
one of the good ones.
you, you people, they mean you,
Mm.
just not at this point in time because
True.
you are a useful idiot."
And you know what? And it's interesting because I had a conversation with someone yesterday who, purely on the fact that he thought that reform was going up in the polls, thought it would be a good reason to join them. And I just said to him, dude, you have your choice, do that, but delete my number, and I will delete yours as well. Because there's a difference between saying, yes, we're playing real politics, and saying, I'm going to team up with a group of people who think my children have no right to exist alongside them. And that is something that our people, always, people from our community, look at it. We, for some weird reason, we're always taken in by the flashy things, by the flashy conversations that are going on now, and we just want to belong. And in so doing, we set up our future for
But
failure.
history shows that there will never be a shortage of Uncle Toms. That's all I have to say on that.
True that. So let's just do a segue from there to Munich. Um, Keir Starmer was last weekend at the Munich Security Conference, um, where he signaled, well, again, he's been signaling, hasn't he, a closer relationship of the EU, of the UK to the EU. Is Keir Starmer going to be the prime minister that either through the front or back door takes us back into the EU?
No, he's not. He will make efforts to, but it's just not going to happen. The people who orchestrated Brexit, they're still very influential. Um, the UK will get back into the EU at some points, but it's not going to be anything less than a decade from now. That those serious conversations will be had. And when the UK gets back into the EU, it will be, it will, the UK will have to do it with basically on its knees. But from the Munich Security Conference, there's what I would really want to talk about is Marco Rubio's speech. Um, my point of view, it was the same speech that JD Vance delivered at the same platform last year, but it was delivered with less hostility. Essentially, the United States government has become right wing, and it really takes this whole narrative of civilizational erasure in Europe as gospel. So, from their point of view, the global South, Mark Rubio in his speech harked back to when Europe were great empires and all of that bullshit. Hang on, when they were great empires, an empire needs someone to oppress. We were at the receiving end. Is that the world you want to take us back to? And related to the whole Jim Ratcliffe thing, it brings up the conversation of when you are pointing a finger, who are pointing back at you. So the key question is everything that is being said in platforms like the Munich Security Conference, it looks like the West, Europe and the West, are basically trying to secure our resources in order to compete with the Russians and the Chinese, but still keep us down. And that's a question. Why can't we have a win-win kind of relationship? Why must it be I win and you lose?
Well, because the ideology that powered colonialism, that powered the slave trade, that powered uh, the destruction of many sub-Saharan African countries in terms of coups and counter coups and regime change has never left, which is that thinking that we are better than you. You are you is the ideology that there's a master race and that the rest of us are nothing. At best we're servants, at worst we're monkeys. And that is what you're seeing either covered in flowery speech like in Marco Rubio's own conversation, or in not so flowery speech with like JD Vance and Trump, who's asking why can't we have European migrants instead of these guys from shithole countries, which is also what is powering uh, Jim Radcliffe's dog whistle and Farage and Rupert Lowe and the rest of all their acolytes. But the other thing really is, whilst you can argue that this is being said by a certain class of people, you can also argue that on the other hand, there's an element of uh, permission that is being given by a lot of people in our community by one, our insistence on not engaging with the political process. Our
Yes.
insistence
When
most times,
when you are not at the table, you are on the menu.
yeah, and that because when you do not engage with the political process, you make it so that you are everyone's whipping dog. And that
Yes.
is a problem we've had over time. It's a problem we continue to have as African heritage communities. We always think, you know what, this doesn't concern me. I'm going to be here. I'm going to work. I'm going to send uh, money home to take care of family, and whatever happens, I'll adjust my posture. What you will find out is at the end of the day, you would have a situation where even though you are told to lend your voice to a consultation on the change of immigration rules with regards to ILR, you open that and then you see some of the most uh, like frankly horrible questions, and you say to yourself, this isn't a consultation, it's just a tick box exercise, and it's too late by that time. So I will say something quite interesting that made me realize just the importance of how much political engagement matters. I go to the Labour conference, right, as much as I can, and every time there are different organizations within the larger Labour group that holds receptions. So I remember I was invited to this reception by the Six for Labour, and these guys are an amazing campaigning machine. You know, but what amazed me, what surprised me and inspired me wasn't so much the fact that this group of people came together to talk about, just how they're supporting the Labour Party and supporting their communities, but it was the MPs who were more or less jostling for the mic to just come and say, "Oh, thank you guys for coming to campaign in my constituency." And it was just quite interesting because I'm sat there and I'm watching. Here's a group called Six for Labour, who, when you see them campaign, they come in a bus, so they really support candidates that they believe in. But it was a fact that these people who could have been at other events chose to come here, hustle for the mic just for a few minutes to say thank you. And it made me realize that when a community organizes itself, it will gain some relevance. It will bring itself to the table. And I don't see anyone, to be honest, I don't see anyone hustling to have a conversation with people from our communities. Because in the first place, we do not even organize. And that is a
So
question I
I
always
mean,
pose.
I think the best example I'll give is during when David Cameron was prime minister. And then they were running for he called a general election. The general election where he got to kick out the Leaves Dem from the coalition, and the Conservatives became the ruling party in their own rights. They did do reach out to our communities, especially through the churches. I remember seeing a video of David Cameron doing worship at the Redeemed Christian Church. But what happened was that our community failed to articulate any demands, failed to mobilize, failed to organize. So they came to the conclusion that these guys, we can ignore them. So essentially, what we are living through is the lesson of, and it's so as a people, we are making the same mistake that we made back home, which is when you go, it's a classic story of the broom. When you bring you take each twig one by one, you can break it very easily. But when you take the whole bunch, you can't.
Yeah.
It's impossible to break it. So what happens with us is we do things on our own. We think that's, and you see it in the classic. And I'll drill down here. I would say the classic Nigerian prayer: make my own better. I better pass my neighbor. Not knowing that you need trees to make a forest, not an individual. So that's the fundamental thing. So you who has gone into politics is one of the big things that you have to change. But it takes a cultural, a mindset shift. The Indians, the Pakistanis have done it. They in this country, they are actually very, very serious interest groups. The political class will not mess with those groups. But with us, so for example, India has exemptions to a lot of the visa. They have a visa waiver program, or an easier path to a visa than Nigeria does, for example. So it's the bottom line is we have not been united as a people, and because we have not been united as a people, it's easy to pick us off.
I agree. Let's agree. Let's unite to agree on a break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about net migration.
Good.
Welcome back to the Black Paper. My name is Ndukwe Ono.
I'm Sheta Wanze.
Cheta, before the break, we left off just speaking about the importance of speaking with one voice, and the need really to realize that if we keep going on as individuals, we will be picked off. And I do agree with that. And it's a point I try to make, especially to a lot of the churches and groups that are here in Derby, saying, look, there needs to be unity in terms of speaking up for the community, because week in, week out, your members are there, they're praying for things that really could have been solved by writing a letter to the MP, by having a meeting with the MP, by organizing. However, for some weird reason, we've imported that, should I call it rivalry? Should I call it wariness of each other?
I would
And
say it's low
brought it into
trust. It's low trust.
it's- yeah.
Yeah, we
And
come
we
from
brought
at
it,
the
and
see
the
at the
things
end
that
of the
what we
day.
don't understand.
At the
No, no,
end of
sorry.
the day, it's one
Carry
of the at the end of the day, it's one of the effects of colonialism. So you you see how you can weave all of these things together. So when a
Mm,
Jim Ratcliffe talks of that they are being colonized, the the colonialism is from their elites, people like Jim Ratcliffe, because what they are doing with all the lies that they spew, oh, Brexit will be wonderful for the UK, but Brexit wasn't. Oh, it's immigrants that are the cause of your problems, when it is clearly policies of the government and billionaires. When these things eventually come to light, and in many you can see, if you look around the media landscape, you can see that they are slowly coming to light. When these things eventually come to light, the society will lose trust in the government, and it becomes a low trust society where it is every man for himself, which is what we have been for a while.
for a very long
One of
time.
the
Yeah.
reasons why in Nigeria is the way it is because people simply don't trust the government. When the government says something, people immediately assume the worst and begin to act accordingly. It's a very
Yeah.
rational response to decades of broken promises by the government. The UK, the West generally, is headed in that direction.
Yeah.
I think I've told the story on this podcast. I would always tell it. The last time I was in the US, watching the news landscape, I arrived the day Joe Biden was diagnosed with cancer. Watching Newsmax, Fox, CNN, and MSNBC. I mean, we have been watching the same story, but from completely different planets. That is a low trust society building. When the society cannot even agree on something. And that low trust society feeds into this next topic on net migration. We will refer to the more in common survey that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. 67% of British people still believe that migration is very high, whereas the UK is actually on track this year to get to negative net migration. Essentially, more people leaving the UK this year than coming. The migrants, as it were, who are still in the UK are people like us who are already in the loop. You've already spent all the money. But for new people, new people are looking at it and are like, why should I hang on? Why should I spend X amount to come and wait 10 years to be eligible for permanent residency when I can go to Canada or Australia and get it within 3 years?
And in fact, not just wait 10 years, because wait 10 years is what you know as of today. You might come in and then suddenly it
And
changes
then
to
suddenly
20
another
years.
consultation will happen and it will say it's 20
So
years.
yeah, so it's not just low trust within, it's low trust because sadly, what in and I wish the government wasn't trying to out reform or out Farage, because what you do is to, and this is the genius, if you can call it that, of Farage and his Brexit uh, uh, wayfarers. What they have done is there's a systemic breakdown of the UK. So internally, they break down the trust of residents, of constituents, of citizens in their government. But then externally, they break down the trust of partners or of people who may want to migrate here. so that they make it look like the UK on its own one is ungovernable. Then what they then do with the media is, in working with their partners in the media, because they are partners, they try to cause as much chaos as they can in the government of the day, so that whether it's the Tories changing leaders every other month, or whether now it's talks, and you can hear whenever you listen to the media, they are still pushing, well, when is care going? Is it this week? Is it next week? Who's going to take over? It's become a project for them to see how much can we cause enough disruption in the system such that we have this absolute chaos. And in so doing, it doesn't matter whether the net migration numbers have gone down. What they would then say is, oh, well, because again, tying it back to Jim Ratcliffe, they've seen that the numbers are coming down. The next thing they are saying is, well, these guys are already here, are colonizing us. So let us then start the conversation of remigration. So that at the end of the day, there's so much chaos, there's no trust, and the system becomes untenable for people like you and me. That is the genius, if I might call it, of Reform and Farage and people like Jim Ratcliffe, who are just a tip of the iceberg, who have just come out as, to blow that dog whistle. There are a lot more people sitting in places where we see them every day, people who probably even interact with us, people at our workplaces who are being bought, who are buying into this thinking, and who will gradually see people like me or you as a problem. When really, really, as one student said to me yesterday, I've spent over £45,000 just to study, yet I don't even know what I'm going to do. It's a problem.
I think that particular one is so again, shifting goalposts after the facts cuts into one of the key things. We talk about the fact that ours is a low trust society. One of the key things that makes ours a low trust society is the fact that government policies change on whims a lot of the time. It's a route that, if I were to want, and it's the reason why a lot of Western countries have been attractive. It's one of the things that they talk about. So, for example, if they talk about China, they will say, "Oh, if Xi wakes up," and I mean, Xi did it. The Chinese leadership was limited to a maximum of 10 years. Xi changed it in the middle of the game to become for life. Those little things are signals. If you want to go to an Arab country, say Dubai or Saudi Arabia, a lot of things are on the whim of the ruling family. One of the reasons Western countries have been attractive to people for a very long time is because of certainty. Play fair. This is the condition under which this will happen, and it will stay that way no matter what. If we change the rules, those who were affected by the rules we won't change the rules for them. It is, we rule the line in the sand and say, from here no further. What this will do eventually is there'll be a shift in the diaspora. Like we've pointed out, more people will look towards Canada, Australia. Many more will even look towards other African countries, because there are quite a few African countries that are becoming more stable.
Yes.
Because it's about respect
Rwanda.
for skills. Nobody, but Rwanda still has that problem. A lot
Well,
of
true, Paul
the
Kagame,
Kagame, the Kagame factor. Things can change on a whim. But basically, this British push, or the UK government's push for negative migration numbers, it actually feels like a push against the people who, in many respects, keep the country running. The people who keep sectors such as the care sector running. The care sector, the education sector, they are complaining bitterly because these are the people who keep them running.
the
Now,
universities.
yeah, that's why I said the education sector.
Oh, yeah,
Now,
yes, sir.
as more people leave, the workload on those who remain, whether it is British or whether it is a migrant, the workload increases. Because if you look at the demographic pyramid of a country such as the UK, it's almost an inverted triangle. The society is getting older very quicker. They will need people to take care of those, and it's not, to paraphrase, it's not just those who, to quote Susan Polanski, those who will be cleaning the bombs. It's also those who will be generating tax revenue needed to keep the system running. when the UK started the welfare state after the Belvedere report, it was about 8 workers to 1 pensioner. Now it's more like 3 to 1, 3 workers to 1 pensioner. That's a heavy burden on workers, and you are still reducing that workforce. Heck, even Rupert Lowe in his the speech that he gave announcing his Restore UK party talked about getting people back to work. They have been promising to get people back to work since the Brexit campaign. What if how are you going to force people into jobs that they don't want to do? Finally, it's also there's this psychological cycle of now they want us, now they don't want us. What is it? Many people arrived to fill critical gaps in the NHS. It was the UK government. I remember very clearly during the pandemic, they sent planes to
To Lagos.
Nigeria to pick up doctors and their families. Now you are saying, oh, we want you, but not your family. Who is going to move without his family? Work for us, but don't bring your family. This negative net migration thing is not just a statistic. It is actually real life for a lot of people. And the net effect is it will make the UK more of an unattractive destination for global talent. Then, in a few years' time, when they see the effects, they will be the ones to try to change things around. I mean, Haba.
I'll just because I don't think there's anything to add to that anymore. I'll just conclude on my own part anyway by saying the trends, the things we've spoken about, it puts forward a very strong argument for organizing. I said it last week, and I'll say it again. Our faith institutions must not just be a place where people gather on Thursdays, on Fridays, on Wednesdays to pray and to talk about spiritual matters.
Pray too
It
much, I say
should be,
people.
yeah, there should be the bedstone of organizing as a community, of coming together and saying, look, what are the social issues that affect us? What are the political issues that affect us? And how can we ensure that our voices are heard as a collective? If not, people tend to realize or forget to realize that this is a country that during colonialism perfected the art of divide and conquer. And divide and rule, sorry. That politics has not left. So as long as you show that you can be divided as a community, you play right into that game. So our faith institutions, please, if anyone is listening from faith institutions, which I know, there are, do more than just pray. Become a community cornerstone. Open your doors to have conversations about issues that concern the community and become a collective voice for the people. And then, of course, individually, because this is also one other thing we do as a people. Someone has said they will do it for us, so let's relax. No, everyone has a role to play. Every single person, register to vote, write to your councillors, to your MPs on critical issues that affect you. Make sure that at every junction your voice is heard on any issue, even if it's just, oh, we're planning to renovate the park in my neighborhood. Write about it. Start making your
Get
voice heard.
involved.
Get involved. Otherwise, next year we might be doing a consultation of, oh, well, let's change this thing from 10 years to 25 years. That's all I'll say on that.
It's so next week.
See you at the next one.
Cheers.